Welcome to FYIVT, your inside source for news and in-depth analysis on what's really happening in Vermont. We want to start by saying thank you to all our listeners and supporters. Your continued encouragement fuels our mission to dig deeper and bring light to critical issues that shape our communities. We couldn't do this without you. Today, we're diving into our article titled, "The Financial Toll of Homelessness in Vermont." Homelessness in Vermont has become more than just a humanitarian issue. It has evolved into a significant financial burden, both for the state and for taxpayers. As of 2023, Vermont had the second highest rate of homelessness in the country, with 51 homeless individuals per 10,000 residents. That's a lot of people, especially in a small state like Vermont, and the problem is only growing. But here's the thing. While we pour millions into solving this crisis, are we really solving anything? Or are we just digging a deeper hole? In recent years, the state of Vermont has allocated $26 million annually to emergency housing programs like the General Assistance Emergency Housing Program. These programs essentially provide shelter for homeless individuals in motels, a temporary solution that has become permanent for many. Now, during the pandemic, federal funds helped keep these programs afloat. But as those funds dry up, guess who picks up the slack? That's right. You guessed it. The taxpayers. You, me, and everyone else who already feels the squeeze from rising taxes and high costs of living. And it's not like this is a new issue. This has been an ongoing drain on Vermont's finances for years. With federal aid on the decline, we're left with only two choices. Either we keep throwing more money at the problem, or we start asking the tough questions. Why is the state so reliant on temporary fixes? Why aren't we pushing for long-term solutions? Now, Governor Phil Scott, bless his heart, has proposed a $249 million housing recovery plan. Sounds great on paper, right? The plan is supposed to help transition people out of emergency housing and into more permanent solutions. But here's the rub. It requires an ongoing financial commitment from the state. And with Vermont's economy already struggling to grow, where exactly is that money supposed to come from? We're talking about a state that is struggling with limited business development and a shrinking tax base. How much longer can Vermont continue to fund programs like these without facing a financial collapse? Vermont's economy is heavily dependent on sectors like tourism, agriculture, and government jobs. These are vital to the state, no question. But here's the problem. These sectors alone aren't generating the kind of growth necessary to support the escalating costs of social services. That includes homelessness programs. Act 250, the state's land use law, which was intended to protect the environment, has become a stumbling block for businesses trying to expand. It's no secret that regulations like these stifle business growth. And with that, we lose out on the tax revenue we desperately need to cover these programs. As businesses slow down or move elsewhere, the state's tax base shrinks, and our reliance on state services continues to rise. So we face a tough question. How do we keep pouring money into a system that is unsustainable? Without robust economic growth, Vermont finds itself in a precarious situation. We're faced with the reality that homelessness is becoming an increasingly expensive problem, but we're not addressing the underlying causes. More and more people are turning to the state for assistance, and as the number of people in need grows, so does the financial strain. We need a new approach. Let's talk about one of the root issues. Vermont's light residency requirements for accessing state assistance. You move to Vermont, you establish intent to stay, and boom, you qualify for help. That's all it takes. On the surface, this seems like a compassionate approach, giving people immediate support when they need it. But what about long-term sustainability? Are we encouraging people to become self-sufficient, or are we setting up a cycle of dependency that's impossible to break? This system doesn't ask much of those receiving help. In fact, there's not much emphasis on personal responsibility. When was the last time we heard of a program that demanded people participate in job training or rehabilitation before qualifying for long-term assistance? How can we expect anyone to transition out of homelessness if the system doesn't hold them accountable for making the effort? The longer individuals remain dependent on the state, the more financial strain it puts on Vermont's already strained budget. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. Eventually, you're going to run out of water. Our resources are finite, and we can't keep going down this path without facing the consequences. There's a solution out there. The Rental Risk Mitigation Program is one example of the state's attempt to strike a balance between compassion and accountability. The program offers up to $5,000 to landlords to cover damages caused by high-risk tenants, those who are transitioning out of homelessness. This is a step in the right direction. It encourages landlords to participate and provides financial protection. But, and this is a big but, if the damages exceed that cap, landlords are responsible for covering the rest. So here we have another system where the state is trying to encourage housing opportunities for vulnerable populations, but without holding tenants accountable for maintaining their housing. We've all heard the phrase, teach a man to fish. The same principle applies here. It's not enough to give people a place to live. We have to make sure they're equipped to live there. We can't just keep throwing money at the issue without expecting a return. And that's where personal responsibility comes in. State programs like General Assistance and the Rental Risk Mitigation Program are important, but they can only go so far. Without the expectation that individuals will make an effort to improve their situation, Vermont risks falling deeper into a cycle of dependency. The solution isn't just about housing. It's about creating pathways to self-sufficiency. It's about making sure that people who rely on these services are actively working toward bettering their lives. The state can't afford to continue down this path of endless financial commitment without seeing results. The question we need to ask ourselves is, how much longer can we sustain a system that doesn't demand personal accountability? Vermont's homelessness crisis is not just a social issue. It's a financial crisis that threatens the state's long-term sustainability. We can't keep spending millions on emergency housing solutions without eventually running out of money. At some point, we need to ask ourselves, are we creating a system that helps people, or are we creating one that simply perpetuates the problem? Governor Scott's housing recovery plan is a start, but the plan needs more than just financial investment. It needs a shift in how we view the problem. Without encouraging self-sufficiency, personal responsibility, and long-term solutions, Vermont will find itself stuck in an endless cycle of escalating costs. Ultimately, Vermont needs to find a way to balance compassion for those in need with fiscal responsibility. We must ensure that state assistance is available, but conditional upon efforts to improve one's circumstances. If we can't make that shift, we're going to continue draining our resources, and the cycle of homelessness will continue to grow. The time to act is now, and we can't afford to wait any longer. Freedom is the foundation of prosperity. Stay informed, stay vocal, and most importantly, stay free. Thank you for listening to this episode of FYIVT. To read the full article and explore more on what's happening in Vermont and how the state works, visit us at FYIVT.com. We appreciate your support and look forward to continuing to bring you important perspectives on Vermont's most pressing issues. Until next time.